We're live. Hi. So Mike Pence, please don't be a coward. Stand up, invoke the 25th Amendment. I mean, I know this is like, I think it's 3. The Homeland Security person just resigned from the cabinet, and Congress. Oh, hi. Every Republican elected to the elections as if they weren't real. I mean, there's going to be, if you examined every election, there's going to be irregularities, almost never enough to totally turn it around. Although, like in 2004, even Jimmy Carter would say that wasn't a free and fair. If it had been monitored by the Carter Presidential Center, it wouldn't have qualified as a free and fair election. What happened in Ohio? Because they know that person in charge of counting votes had given like at least $100,000 to George W.'s campaign. Anyway, we love you, whoever you are, and don't get disheartened by. We've never had to really learn this much about the Constitution, and I could fail almost any test on anything. Most 7-year-olds can do math better than me, and once you get to 8 or 9 years old, you're probably better at retaining science than I am. Or I really understand stuff for like a second or a half a minute, and then it's just like the river downstairs. It just totally leaves my head, and I forgive myself. Just like whenever I meet somebody, the key is when I meet amazing humans, and a new dog best friend for the first time yesterday. Because when Levi, who works with folks with rare genetic disorders, bringing their stories to the light of day, the stories of the people with rare genetic disorders and folks and the families going through it with them. And, within that camp would be, we lost my stepsister to ALS last June, on June 15th. And then her dad, my amazing stepdad. So we lost Phil Gerber, Phil like Phyllis, Gerber like the baby food, her dad, Milt Ebner. And we lost him on December 6th. And we had his Zoom funeral on December 10th, just a month ago. And, so I guess it's a lot of times when I just start carrying on into taping something, or this is streaming live, but there's probably one person says this. I think there's one person watching it, but it might be including me, so maybe there's nobody else. But continuation of the House Bill HR 8662, and the Senate corresponding bill is S4867, and it's the Act for ALS Act, which would be access to accelerating access to critical therapies for ALS and other motor neuron diseases. So that not only it would be the first time the federal government got involved in putting the FDA and the National Institutes of Health together, and as opposed to this slow, horrific drug going through phase 3 trial and all the money that it costs them, because not that many people. Compared to so much smaller than to other diseases, it's not profitable enough for big pharmaceuticals to get involved in developing drugs, which is why, so like what Levi does downstairs is like, you know what I mean? It's easy to, like, if you see look sides going on in the world, or it's to look up in the April 45, the beginning of in Germany, and the death camps. It's hard to wrap your head around it, but if you have like the story, a specific story, so you can identify, you can relate to your heart opens and break up to the people, and it breaks for the people's plight. So if you watch something like Schindler's List, or what's the one? It's another so heartbreaking one, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and actually there's one that Vanessa Redgrave was in, about the woman who. The orchestra that would play, and as long as they kept playing for the Nazi commandants, they could prolong their own life. And but the woman who was Vanessa Redgrave played felt she was this certain aspects weren't. I thought I only got through. It was so intense. I only got through about 45 minutes or 50 minutes, and then that's when I looked it up and read that the woman wasn't as happy. But I think she ended up acquiescing. It's just a lot to. Whenever we watch about genocide presently going on, a genocide past, or any heartbreaking unfairness, it was just today. It was just commuted. Sorry, this is hot there. There's a miracle that there's warmth in here. Well, heat rises because I'm in the roof, but that it was like 18 degrees out. Now it's warm enough and the heat's included, but it's included only in the sense that, like, all these plants that used to live, plants and dinosaurs that used to be alive hundreds of millions of years ago, they're or makes our fossil fuel. Oh, if I don't say it, if I don't hashtag it, because I forget to hashtag everything, but look up 350.org, because that's everybody standing up for the planet together. And even if folks are Democrat, Republican, Greens, Independent, whatever, they would want to stand up for the earth, to the fossil fuel industry. Though it does break my heart that Bill McKibben, who teaches, who's one of our best environmental writers for decades, and Rolling Stone for decades has given him a platform, and so him with speakings of James Hansen from NASA, that's why it's called 350.org, because it's like, if we don't get, and when I started plugging into it, like around, I'm trying to think, it was maybe 2009 was the first year I joined, and by then we were already past the 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide, and that's what we would need for the Earth to continue and be okay, and that we species wouldn't continue to be dying off. And that's really what the question should be about. Instead of getting all like, it's not about how could you defend Trump. There's a racist, misogynist, horrific base that's still going to be there after Trump's gone, even after, if you take Ted Cruz out of it, and Kevin McCarthy and Josh Hawley, there's still going to be all these people that like if you say, oh, well, this is our religion, but if you really have an interview with Christ in your heart and say, because now I'm Jewish, but Christ was a rabbi, and so it's like, do instead what's going to happen in 2 days, which is this wonderful soul, Patrick O'Neill, the father of 8 kids. I was on a Zoom yesterday with him and his wife, and these kids sang on four of them sang on this tune. He has to report to federal prison 2 days from now because him and 6 other protesters, like in the spirit of Dorothy Day, Catholic worker protesters, stood up to the largest naval weapons, largest Trident nuclear submarine base in the world, the U.S. It's in just north of Jacksonville, Florida, up in Georgia. And so they kept going back to, they were found guilty of on October 24th of 2019 of breaking into 3 different parts of the Kings Bay Trident nuclear missile submarine base, and causing $30,000 damage, but facing up to 20, 21, 25 years in jail. And Liz McAllister, who had been married to, he hasn't been alive for a bit, but Philip Berrigan and Patrick O'Neill who's going in 2 days, and all these other wonderful souls, that look them up. Look up Kings Bay Plowshares 7. But Plowshare spelled P-L-O-W, not O-U-G-H. And Kings Bay Plowshare 7, that's this from Isaiah, swords into plowshares, so take war materials and return them back to the kind heart that they really were from when they were growing through lifetimes and growing through the earth. And, and if that sounds crazy, what's this old hippie talking about? Always get more indigenous friends in your life, get more First Nation peoples in your life. It's because indigenous friends would remind you that everything is alive and singing, that the metal that makes up the tanks and the drones and the aircraft and the bullets, 99.9999% of its life, it was not a bullet or a tank. It was singing underground. And everything has that. If you say that's crazy, well, there were no mammals starting a couple 100 million years ago, or maybe it was a little before that. It was the tiniest. I mean, it'd be like this, but last 200 million years. And so if this was 1 billion years ago, we were having a talk and like, oh, how do you express love 1 billion years ago if there's no mammals, and there's no creatures and all this, but can you have your heart singing from the rock and the dust that you are? And you say, well, that's crazy. Well, then where does love come from? Well, you say, well, God. Well, you could say, okay, well, I think love is going on forever and is this irresistible force that my biggest gratefulness to God, to Goddess, is that Goddess says yes to love that sits inside every being, including the beings that are most scared, because it's only from fear that you keep magic sacred, exchange, you keep every moment from being ceremony. It is ceremony anyway. The people doing the meanest, cruelest stuff on earth are still on a spiritual journey. They're just not realizing, they're not remembering their dream time. They're not remembering their childhoods. Think of it. You got to feel bad for most politicians because they can't express their heart, their full, vulnerable, amazing, love-lit heart. to so many of the people they spend their time of the day with, not just politicians. I mean, most people at most jobs, you'd be like, sorry, we're firing you for talking about love at work. We're talking about standing up and singing for the benefit of planet Earth at work. And nobody's in charge. You know, all the 1,000 workers, the 1,800 workers, the 40 workers will just go around in a circle. We'll keep counting. Whoever introduced the song a minute ago, they can't introduce a song until we go around the whole circle of 40 or the circle of 1,800 or any other number. And would I get these songs, and what would they mean, and why would I sing them, and how could they be nourishing? And there's in my lifetime, they keep discovering more stuff about what works, what boosts the immune system, what opens your heart, what changes a state of being. Like they're like Hippocrates, you know, that Hippocratic oath, first do no harm. Hippocrates worked with like aromatherapy, for example, you know. And you could say, well, if you smell something that's there, because you can also smell things that aren't there. Like there's, I put up an article last week from the New York Times from, I'm not sure exactly like when the article came out, but it's from COVID. A lot of people are losing their sense of smell. I don't know, I'm going to say a lot. I have no idea what percent. Losing their sense of smell and their sense of taste. Smell is way deeper than our sense of taste. Like that new amazing dog I was saying at the beginning when I just turned it on, Raja, that I met, and I was a big baby, and he was like, oh, the elevator's busted here. Hopefully they fixed it today because it was out for 33 days. And then it went crazy since, you know, you have to like move it and push it like 90% of it to get it in. But luckily, the miracle, think of all the people in the world with that's one of the bazillion prayers we could be doing, is anybody who's about to go into an elevator or anything else that they're concerned about their safety, and if they don't have a cell phone, just that sends love and protection so that their voice, in case they got stuck or overwhelmed, that their voice would reach out and someone would come and help them, so that they could, that the helper and the helpee and everybody gets to have a longer, healthy life, you know, with love exchanged all around. Because that's the challenge. I mean, I get so drawn into looking at the House and the Senate, and so if Pence doesn't do, I mean, Trump hasn't spoken to him since 6 days ago when you know he was ostracized by Trump because he refused to overturn the election. No, sorry, you know, I mean, what did he think? But it's hard to. I don't understand. Like what I was saying about Josh Hawley before, you know, or about Kevin McCarthy, or about Ted Cruz before, you know, or any of these leadership that I don't understand. Don't you want to be able to look at your kids and your best friends and your grandkids and your sweetheart in the eye and your parents in the eye? Just look right in the eye of whoever, because you're standing up for the planet. You're not like just playing to your base and scared of losing the backing of everyone who's backing Trump. And we've been down this road ever since Reagan came in, because it wasn't until Reagan of like how you felt religiously, because Jimmy Carter is born again, and Jimmy Carter, heartbreaking illness, overtime angels helping him and Rosalind stay alive, doing the amazing work. And then the Carter Presidential Center does such amazing work. And if you think of something that they're not doing, just write to Jimmy, Plains, Georgia, and it will get to him. But then just think of, and it's not just on stuff that he would do. I mean, like they go around the world and look at like guinea worm disease, and but even if during a Sally Jesse Raphael show where she had Jimmy and Rosalind on for a whole hour, like in about 1988 or 89 or so. No, it was 87, because it was when Amy had earlier in the year. Well, in April '87, we had the trial here, 6.5 miles away, where Amy Carter was arrested 7 miles from there, over across the river in Amherst, with other protesters protesting, you know, taking over, you know, occupying at UMass Amherst, and standing up for you shouldn't be allowed to, you shouldn't be this group stuff, illegal operations, and be allowed to just freely be working on the UMass campus. But you could say that about so many different universities around the country and around the world. Like, are they doing work for the Defense Department? My heart breaks for all these conflicted scientists that want to do good, and yet their work is co-opted. And like, you know, even Einstein was like heartbroken, you know, just thinking of, you know, on an atomic end. And that's why, what's his name, who lost a lot of his later clearance? He worked for the Manhattan Project. Is it Oppenheimer? Who am I thinking of? because you worry folks, like I was saying, I did a recording like last week where, maybe it was later that day or on Wednesday of the insurrection at the Capitol. And that woman called in on C-SPAN from Kentucky. She was so worried about the communists. And you're always able to get a stir out of people about the communists. But there's never been a democracy that totally works. There's never been, I get into so many arguments over the years because I'm grateful, let's say, to how Castro treated dark-skinned people and treated women, but the way he was so horrific to if you're gay, or if you're indigenous folks or anybody just taking issue with the administration, that's going to be, I think when I was bringing up last week about how, like, right, Ginsburg would be invited to like a writers conference, we'd invited to speak his heart down in Cuba, but then be thrown out because it turned out they were monitoring how he was speaking, wonderful pro expression of two consenting adults being able to do what those two consenting adults with each other want to do. And then, when Ginsburg, and then even when he went to Poland, and look how Poland has moved so much more to the right. Like that was one of the few things you could say that Reagan moved Poland more towards standing up, letting solidarity movement. It's funny because Reagan was such a union buster, but like Wałęsa, solidarity grew in Poland, and now it's so heartbreaking. Like what I was saying last week about with Poland and with in Hungary with Orban. There's such a it's amazing the traction. You're excited about if somebody you're getting excited about hating darker skinned people or hating women or hating a certain religion. I mean, I'm Jewish, but because I'm white, I get to glide through in so many situations. But like, I'm already 62, and that's already how old. It's past life expectancy. Again, just by the luck of the draw of where I was born, like what I was saying last week about how, because every day the last 23 years here in this building, the jets fly overhead, the fighter jets. Back then it was the F-18s, the F-22s, and now it's the F-35 from Barnes Air Force Base. So if they had to all of a sudden send jets down to New York, they'd send them down from Barnes. And then the other Air Force Base we'll go and protest at is because we don't go protest at Barnes, we go protest at Westover Air Force Base. And when I say protest, it's like you go and you, with your whole heart, sacred in the other, like over hundreds of times when I've talked to cops over the years and, ask them like where they would rather be, what they would rather be doing with their day or their life. And I'm just thinking of us between well, we did for Gulf War II, but also for Gulf War I. So that's George W.'s father. So George H.W. And on the World AIDS Day, like this December 1st, it really wasn't, people don't acknowledge World AIDS Day in the way they were. And again, by the luck of the draw, like World AIDS is a death sentence in so many parts of the world still. It was, oh God. So it was December 1st, 1990. And so there's about 5,000 of us at the Westover Air Force Base. And, oh no, it was more that day. I'm thinking of the actual day that the war began, which is crazy to declare the war on Martin Luther King's birthday, January 15th, 1991. See, because of the March on DC, and just there were so many beautiful souls. And then when we got back, turned out Jane had died when we were down in DC. This housemate of mine, this amazing, she had just moved out to be with her sweetie, Paul. Hi, Paul. Sorry, I have to write back to you. We wrote back a little bit, but we could go and I have to write back again. So, and Jane would sing from her whole heart. Jane Bradstreet from hundreds of years ago, of which I haven't read at all, Jane Bradstreet. But Jane would sing. Oh my God! Like we honored her. We went to the ocean, in the van. Just whose van was it? Was it Jeff's? We all went and we're circling at sun. I think it was full moon, so the moon rise was coexisting, corresponding with the sunset. But Jane had, before she moved with us, had some of the first, like, I don't know, was it 30 years maybe, with her parents, because her seizures were so intense. They were just scared of like her, of her dying, which is what she ended up doing, but by living on her own terms. In fact, when we were down in DC, Paul going to wake her up, and he couldn't wake her up, and now Um, but I'm thinking of it would have made her smile because she loved, again, singing as a healing. And we were making up all these songs. We were taking all these Christmas songs, but applying Krishna to them. And that's the thing, kind of like focus on the love part, like what I was saying before about Kingsbury Plowshare 7. If someone's like, it's a Christian thing to do, well, if you really were having a dialogue with Christ, what would you want most to happen right now? And what is the fairest way you could be so that folks would look back on today and go, oh, well, we did our best. Oh, wait, I should be quiet and try and sing, come up and sing this or something. So really, that's D flat? Okay. It's the sound of the earth, okay. Oh, like the first, was I saying it the other day, just a few days ago, about, right, the first concert fundraiser for people at risk. Because think of Bangladesh, East Pakistan, think of, like, every year, just the floods, you can only afford to be there where so many lives are lost in the flooding every year. So George Harrison, so people could say, like, oh, and he did end up, what was the court decision? It was unconscious plagiarizing of He's So Fine. So but then he follows by bringing Billy Preston, who's like amazing. I mean, when Billy Preston was a teenager, George, Ray Charles brought him around. Would be in Europe with him and other places. Be like, this is my inheritor. This is who continues on in my shoes. And Billy was like amazing, and like at the Radio City, like about in Manhattan, about 3.5 weeks after 9/11. It was October 2nd, a week before John Lennon's birthday. So Billy was one of the co-asked, besides, she had Lou Reed did Jealous Guy that night, and it was Dave Matthews sang one of Yoko's favorite songs of John ever, In My Life, and Rufus Wainwright and Sean Lennon, and who was the third with them? I'm trying to remember. They did This Boy. Oh wait, maybe Jai Guru Deva, Across the Universe. Jai Guru Deva was, I think, Sean Lennon and Moby and Rufus Wainwright. Maybe that was it. Because I know Sean did both Across the Universe and This Boy. And that's the decision. Because I always think of Yoko with that. If everybody, we just passed the 40th anniversary on December 8th, a month ago. So 40th anniversary of John being murdered, and Yoko's response when you're in a room or an outdoor area and somebody slags on Yoko, giving her the hardest time, thinking of, can you imagine losing your spouse, your best friend in the world, to be murdered, and then spending the rest of your life, every week of the rest of your life, standing up for peace, And that's why I think of, like, the murders at the Charleston, at the Methodist Church, the white supremacist murders, and folks choosing to pray for the person that murdered their loved ones, because you've always heard that, right? What is it? If you hold the gun, may have the two fingers like this. But these three fingers face back to you. Wait, see, what does it say behind me? See there? See, Mother's compassion, earth. Is it gonna? Wait a minute. Is it gonna look backward? I'm so lost. Is it gonna look backwards when I see this back? I don't know. But more important, sing from the heart of every being, live from the breath of every light, sing from the every being ever. Yeah, we're family. Yes, the earth is family. Everywhere is family. What do you think is happening when you choose to sing with your breath, love with your breath, shine with your breath, help with your breath, help earth with your breath, love life, love other life forms with your breath, love every life form with your breath. So sing from the heart of every being, like, look for the love of light. Look from the heart of love light in every being that is heading toward you. Try it out. See what miracles start to happen when you don't mind bringing love home. when you don't mind love to just happen. They percolate, they sing, they joyously wave to anyone who's stuck. They help out right now on earth anyone who's overwhelmed. They listen to the heart of whoever's freaking out right now. Because, I mean, we're overwhelmed from this. From the moment that we're born, we are overwhelmed. That bright light compared to the dark, warm, it's pretty overwhelming. It's, well, one of the reasons the baby cries. You want to cry. You want to hear the baby cry when they're born, so that they have their lungs are getting the lungs working. You know, I know friends that, what friend was saying recently that they were born like 4 months. I think it was 5. They were born at 5 months, 4 months premature. I think another friend, but it wasn't. Anyway, but he was like about 4.5 months or 5 months when he was born. So we are waving love light to anyone who's stuck now. That's the 11 o'clock church bell. Of course, the street. Was that from the Catholic Church? The other church. That's it, because the previous July we had the birthday for him. And why did I just say Danny? Oh, because when I went, and I wish so many other folks went to the funeral, although we had some really good jam. Flaming, first tune we did in the basement of the church after Danny's funeral was Rebel Rebel, was Bowie's Rebel Rebel. And the point of Flaming Dragons of Middle Earth was anybody of any belief system, or even if you didn't have fingers that worked or toes that worked or a mind that you were happy with, you were welcome to participate in the birthing of the music. You know, it was just, everybody was infinitely welcome. And the reason I thought of Danny was that his love was so big that he stuck at his mother's church, even though, and I talked to the pastor about this earlier, I said to the pastor, like, it sounds like Danny's beliefs on, you know, in terms of pro-gay marriage and like consenting adults, and like the judge was not as cool with that at all. Danny chose to stay within that same church, just like all these lesbian friends I'm so proud of over there. I'm so glad. How dare I be proud of anybody? But I'm so grateful that like the Catholic Church, even though being pregnant and having control of your own body. So yes, compared to some other popes, and I'd rather him be there than Mel Gibson, but still it's like really, really heartbreaking, you know, just like what people could do, like what Ratzinger could have done, you know, beforehand. And just, it's just, you know, I just started thinking of it. There was this beautiful, watch the beginning of this beautiful movie. It was on YouTube. It was, you have to hit the ad thing every 10 minutes and do our four seconds of ad or something. What is it? Evelyn. So it's, because I've seen work of his years ago, 30 years ago, Bruce Beresford as a director. And it was, and even though, and how dare I say this, because I could sing poorly at any, I wish that Pierce Brosnan sang differently. That was the only substitute I made in the movie. In fact, that's when I think I had to bow out, when he was playing. It was beautiful because the father and son thing, his father's playing fiddle and he can't afford to get his kids out, his 3 children out of the protective care of the, you know, of the reformatory of the shelter, you know, what's it called, Evelyn. And so then hang in there with her. But like with most things, like most books, I only like finish 1 of 300. So the good thing about not being able to finish a book or a movie, which is better than when we were in trying to protesting against Interfor, a transnational company. So you had companies taking 5, 6, 7, 8, 900-year-old trees and turning them into phone books. You know, just like, doesn't make any sense. And then we'd be on this clear cut where it was like so beautiful, but it was so heartbreaking. You know, kind of like, that's the difference growing up in Queens the first 17 and a half years. You got so used to loving the city energy. I still never stopped loving the city energy, but it's just, you get sad because you think of everything that was there before everything got built up, because everything is singing beneath everything, you know, and that's how, but to be unafraid to, well, it's different. See, that's the good thing about if you make a piece of art and you let everything build up and build beyond initial 2 characters or 3 characters at the beginning of the story. So at least you hope and pray, because it's fiction. Like if you make a story, you make a picture, nobody's dying from the fact that you're obliterating. If you kind of, so that the painting can grow, you just dance across creatures that were some of your favorite creatures ever. You made them 3 or 4 weeks ago or a day or 2 ago. But the blessing, back to the pictures thing, that we live in a time of photography, so you can take a picture of those first 2, 3 characters that are in the piece. Because I'll bet you have some friends that are like amazing artists, or you might be an amazing artist and not know it, because you just do the earlier things that work and sing to each other and balance so beautifully, and you're afraid of going too far and ruining it. But again, you live at a time where you can take good pictures, and so your friends that you think are going to get so pissed and heartbroken that you ruined the picture, what they loved about the painting or the drawing you were making. So take the picture for them and then just keep growing and see what the picture wants to be. So this was thousands of people in 1874, and in 1997, there was 800 people, and there was 800 people 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years before that. And probably wouldn't be all these folks if there wasn't Smith College. Because Smith and Mount Holyoke made the whole 5 college, and Amherst College make the 5 college thing possible, and then the UMass, one of the better state schools, and then this Hampshire, where I know people say it's like a liberal trust fund hippie school, but it was a housemate of mine in the mid 80s here, and he actually went on to medical school. He was, what was he? Very nice soul, but I can't remember. Oh man, okay. Well, if you quiz me on like to remember most housemates ever, because you live with 2, 3 people, but then we live with 7, 8 people at different places, and I wouldn't trade that for anything, which is how I could afford to be. But for the last, to not just 23, but 25, 26 years, just on my own, and with all the spirit around ever. But I mean that so I could say yes to whatever songs I want to pour through. So that's kind of what I should do instead of yapping here. So miracle. So any minute now. I think, we're about to be at 11:11 in 1 minute from now. So that's always the peace, prayer, miracle. But again, hopefully Pence would go along with the 25th Amendment and asking the remaining cabinet members. And then hopefully prayerfully, the Republican leadership in the House and Senate would just listen to their hearts and picture themselves having a sacred talk with all their loved ones days and weeks and years from now, and to act in a manner that is fair to the earth, is fair to the most amount of people. It's just decent to do the decent thing, to do the right thing. So where are we? 11:11 for peace miracle. So peace chant. We love you, every being. Thank you, every being, ever. Everyone is born from the breath of every being ever. Everyone is sung from every dancing dust that has ever been. Every water ever is singing from every dust ever. So when you're on Mars or anywhere else where there seems to be no water, there is some water song singing in you, no matter what you ever think is going on. Oh, I guess I just learned something. We're 38 minutes in, but there was one actual other person until now. I love it. Right now, there's 0 people looking at the stream. And I probably could have put the word #Trump, and then maybe there'd be 2 or 3 people looking. But it's not. Oh, this is the thing. The sound recording, the sound in the video, and this is terrible, but I have this other camera mic thing here, so which better sounding. And so if anybody wants to add on to anything that Spirit just helped me make up, some my wonderful, amazing dead grandparents who helped us sing through everything. So wait, we were in D flat, so the sound of the earth. So Carol just had her birthday, and she's this friend who I love so much that taught me back around 86 when we first became friends. D flat, sound of the earth. So now we'll move up to Oh, to E flat? Okay. You'll never fall from hell and earth. I bring you love right now. You love every being, love from the light of every being. It's not about us, it's about everyone's great grandchildren. Oh, Annie and Peter yesterday had their Rise Up a little over an hour singers workshop. I got to tune into the last half hour of that. You folks are so wonderful. So like I said, Patrick O'Neill has to report to federal prison 2 days from now for being and for standing up at Kings Bay Tried nuclear submarine base in Georgia on the 50th anniversary with the 6 other co-defendants on this 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination. And because at the end of his life, especially in the last year of his life, nobody spoke out more intensely about the famous thing about the U.S. is the biggest purveyor of war in the world, And so that's irresponsible, but how to do it in a joyous way, because it's one of the few things that happened with Trump running and then Trump becoming president is that it suddenly became okay. All the things I would drive other people crazy about, like talking about human rights, or like my family would say, Jeff, you just were painting the last 6 days in a row in Manhattan and you haven't made a cent. Do you think maybe if you put away some of the human rights for all on the Free Tibet signs, or or have sweatshop huge 2, 3 foot, 4 foot things out in front about, send love through sweatshop walls, and referring people to gapsucks.org, and then while doing that, being outside of what Gap owns, and anywhere in Manhattan, and you just go, okay, I think this is good, maybe because you just trust that you're going to meet people that you most 99% chances of the time you've never met before, and you didn't know you were going to park there, and then you check with the manager or the owner and say, do you mind? I'm going to be here until a cop moves me. Or until you need to move me. So let me ask before I unload the 40 paintings out, and laying it on the ground, lean them on my car, and have some 5, 6, 7 foot paintings, and have some people join in with making some art or music. And then the key is when a cop does come up, especially, and it's funny, a cop could come up on a bike and go, what are you doing here? And the cop loves what we're doing so much. And it could be some friends I called up, before we had cell phones, because this is doing it 98, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, all the way through 2010, 2011. I mean, I've gone back not that many times since 2011 as much, just because it just got physically harder to go down. But again, I feel like such a baby compared to my stepsister who had ALS, Phil Gerber, my stepsister, who died from ALS on June 15th. Again, so what's the number I said before? So the House bill coming up is HR 8662. What I didn't say before was until a few days ago in the last session of Congress, 278 congresspersons, so more than the majority, and so close, because 219 is what you need, is what you need for half your vote, but 278 is just 13 away from 291, because 291 would get it out of being bottled up in committee, and it would be allowed to come to a vote on the floor. It would be up to Nancy Pelosi to bring it to a vote on the floor. And then the Senate version, which we only have 15, as far as I knew, the less that I knew about it was 15 votes. And like I said yesterday or 2 days ago, I said, right, because not our senators Ed Markey or Elizabeth Warren, and not Senator Bernie Sanders. It's heartbreaking to only get 15 senators, but 278 congresspersons. So we were so close, and I was getting so obsessive and just making all these calls to different congressional offices. And that was one of the tough things is because you have majority of the time you're not getting a live person. You don't know whether the phone's going to let you go on for 3 minutes or 2 minutes or a minute and a half. So I would just be grateful and not bring up, if I was calling a Republican congressperson that was saying overturn the election, I wouldn't bring that up. I'd say just thank you if you could support this. In fact, I always want to when I'm talking to anybody whose behavior can scare me, I shouldn't dare talk to them unless I picture all the compassionate things about them. You know, we do such a disservice when we let people get away with, even some of our best friends will get away with, they'll get mad and they'll be just saying, oh, they're evil. Or people that we love, some favorite folks, and or your favorite pastor might get up and say, these evil folks. And that's shutting down the dialogue. It's like anybody can make any decision, can make the most compassionate decision at any given moment. And why not? It's not about you or I disagreeing or agreeing. It's about what can we do to help the most amount of people on earth right now. And I just, because I even wrestle with that about, like, you could say once your lobby, when I say lobby, not 1 cent of lobbying money was spent to get the 278 congresspersons on board with it's the Act for ALS Act, again, accelerating access to critical therapies for ALS and other motor neuron degenerative diseases. So I didn't say it before, but Neuron is one of the drugs that's most maybe promising of all the drugs. It's stem cells, but it's not from embryonic stem cells, because some congresspersons won't sign on because of, like, well, what if they're afraid if it's embryonic stem cells? So this is just stem cells taken from the person, treated, put back into the person after being, like, kept super cold, and being able to not only slow down the rate of the muscles shutting down, but give you back some of the function you had some months ago, because ALS just robs the body's ability. The muscles stop moving. You can't move your hands anymore. You need to be fed. Eventually you end up having to have part-time breathing apparatus, and then more and more and more, until, because you can't breathe and you have to be on a ventilator. So that's something in common with, because it's something that you're learning about. If you're thinking about ventilators, if you're stuck in a mood and you get pissed, or someone was just so mean to you and you're afraid you won't be centered enough to be really kind to the person that you have to speak to on the phone, that you just waited 35 minutes to get on the phone call for the service thing that you're trying to get help. And why not? Almost every talk we have is with a person we may never talk with again. All the more reason to look at our life as if we're already dead, and how would we have had that exchange, and how could we make any exchange sacred? So we're on those lines here. So we were at E flat last? Okay, so here. Your heart, it sings from the heart of every. Your love, it lights from the light of every. There really are no enemies. We really are all born from each other. It's true, it's true. We really all are born from the heart of each other. It says your connection is unstable. Please wait while we try reconnecting. So I don't know if this is going, oh wait, but this is recording on this other backup. So, and it just went off. So sorry, I stopped. What was the prayer? Somebody sing it back to me, because like I said, my head's like a river. So whatever I was giving birth to a minute ago, I can't, or 10 seconds ago, I can't remember. So, right. Your heart sings from everything. Your love lights from everywhere, day or night. Your love is how we all get through. And you, and you, and you, and you, and you have love, our love. Everyone is love, no matter who you think you are. You're really deep down love. You really, really are. What's that? You know what's so weird? It's like the video was so slow that all it's getting is trails. I mean, I know because I'm permanently tripping, so I always get the trails anyway. But I can see that it's also trails to anyone else too. So wait. Never mind, Bo Peep. We will find your sheep no matter where we be. So that's again proof I grew up in the New York area. Because in Queens, every Thanksgiving there'd be a high school football game, Iona and New Rochelle, and it would be followed by a March of the Wooden. It's I think it's from around 1934, and it still stands up. Or I haven't seen it in like 10, 15 years, but it still stood up then. All right, wait, dude, we've been on for 49 minutes. Ooh, like so many of our Buddhist friends, they would stay by the body, hanging by the person that died, like chanting for them to reincarnate. Then seven times 7, 49 days. You know, so much in 7, so much in so many cultures of so many religions and non-religions, but so many amazing cults just of like goddess cults and other religions are just 49. And so I wonder, so it's like, so right, if you're tempted to reincarnate and some of your best folks, that friends and loved ones that knew you best, no, you don't reincarnate. I know it's tempting to be that little turtle or that snail or that bird. Red-tailed hawk that was just on the telephone pole right outside the Mason's Lodge. We have a Mason's Lodge like 100 yards from here. And when I was saying about belief systems, because I got sad when I found out, like, oh, you have to believe in God. I think you can't be an atheist and a Mason, which seems like kind of, I mean, you wish everybody was willing to accept everybody in any given moment. So that's one of the prayers, like when you talk to anybody on the phone, or when you go up to any establishment or somebody working for any company or any federal or local government, and to find a way to convince the person to open their heart to that they have more power to make a decision over doing something compassionate on their job than they thought they maybe had. And one of the things that Spirit will have me do, like I'll say, okay, it's all right if you don't want to. It could be a basic thing like they're painting on the street for like 13, 14 years, and like just and then you have so many paintings out, you can't find someone to watch over your stuff. You're just having a leap of faith to go to the bathroom and be in and out quickly. You know you're going to be quickly. You're not going to wipe stuff all over. But when someone says, no, sorry, we don't have a bathroom you can use, instead of getting all cynical, oh, really? You don't have a bathroom? But feel for them. It's like maybe somebody made the biggest mess ever or keep making the biggest mess ever. And why should that have to be part of what they do every day, is to like clean up other people's messes. So I'll be like, I swear I'm not from a hidden camera thing. Or I shouldn't say that because maybe they'll be kinder because they'll think maybe I should do it because maybe they have a camera set up an hour later. But I'll say like, in the eyes and heart of the person that asks you after me, whether it's minutes or a day or two later to ask to use your bathroom next, and just, I don't know, like everything's a case by case thing. But now I'm just thinking, because it must be one of the biggest challenges. Wow, this is trying to picturing porta potties in a zillion places where they're normally not. But then I was picturing how many porta potties would you have in India so that the Ganges would stop being so much with poop, because that must be so hard. I wonder, like the tearing of like the sadness of any grandparent who's like saying, well, this is, no, we're going to go in the Ganges, we're going to go and cleanse, and these miracles, these purification, but knowing that all this upstream, these thousands and thousands and thousands of gallons of poop being like just dumped into the river upstream. But it is a certain amount of faith when before they blocked it off, and we still sneak down and swim, but we'd go. It's not the same at all. I was about to say the is it part of the Westfield? Part of the Deerfield River, and not knowing whether there had been a radioactive plume, because it was just downriver from the oldest power plant, nuclear power plant in the United States, was Yankee Row, until it was decommissioned, like until they shut it down. But then they still have always spin fuel watch, but they set it down in '92. But like when you'd go, like, like most people aren't going to announce when they have the radioactive release. So it's kind of what I meant was it's an act of faith getting into the river. It's called the potholes, if you're ever in Shelburne Falls, Mass. And it just goes back gazillions of years, just like how these amazingly smooth, big holes, and how they were just try and picture how the rocks and water did that. And if I don't, all right. This is great. I love it. This is so inspiring. There's nobody looking in. So that kind of frees me. Okay. So again, everything we do, we're talking across time, because one of my favorite things that I've ever heard starting many, many decades ago was that time is what we agree to keep time is what we agree upon to keep everything from happening at once. So here we'll go to E then. Okay. So half step up to E. Your faith is in your toes and mind and all your hearts. Just sing now kindly to somebody who was freaking you out. You found a way to picture all their grandparents. Now they're not freaking you out. You just pictured their entire family. Now they're not freaking you out. Thank you, every love light. Thank you, every love light that shines from every other. Thank you, miracles of every being. I don't know, right now, what time is Pence supposed to be deciding? Because if Pence turns and won't go and present to the cabinet, based on the 25th Amendment, because Trump is not fit to be president. So then it would be a vote tomorrow for Congress to, and they have enough votes in the House. The problem is you need two-thirds in the Senate. And then you need two-thirds in the Senate on the third part of the 14th Amendment, which is like if you ever tried to overthrow the government, or you just stood up against, supporting the overthrow of the government, then you could be barred from office. But you have to get the initial two-thirds vote. But I'm wondering, and I'm just praying and praying, that some of these senators, because so far just 3 Republican senators, just 3, and we need like two-thirds. We need like not 53, because it's 50. It's tied before. Murkowski actually is saying that she would leave the Republican Party, if they keep on the way. That's what I don't understand. How could you be a Republican if you say, well, the Republican Party stood for something? And I was saying about the kind of comparing a little with the Catholic Church, but the difference is you name the truths. What I was saying before about Rat, so many chances to just be so outspoken and unbreak so many hearts. It said that connection wasn't working, and now, so hopefully, but again, it's, the thing I was just saying, if it got cut off, it was about Ratzinger could have spoken out just when he was almost Pope, before he was Pope. And I wonder if he just felt ashamed about that, because he bowed out quicker than almost any Pope ever. Sorry, every time I hear the name, just Ratzinger, it's kind of like if we think any creature on earth is not singing, then we're not listening. Like when I met that amazing new dog, Raj, yesterday, who's like a rescue dog from down south, and Levi's like, do you want to come down and meet Raj? And he's like, and I'm like wrestling with her, because I was in the middle of making little movies and singing into the movies, like while taking like half-minute movies of paintings. And it was extra, lighting, just the light of sunshine. And but I'm so glad I went downstairs and met Raj and in here. But then when he just would space, it's like, dude, smells are like the coolest books and the coolest movies ever, all at once, to a dog, or to like just about every animal. So why should you compel more than a little bit of the attention of the dog? The dog's heart and head are everywhere. Because think about that. Whenever you're when you see someone trying to dragging the dog and they don't have a harness that reaches across the back, and instead it reaches by the neck, and it's breaking your heart. But I find that if you try to tell the owner of the dog what to do, of course they're just going to most likely shut down. But if you can find a way, ask for help from your wonderful dead dog friends and all these wonderful other creatures that aren't alive anymore, that are singing in the breath of every moment ever, and ask for help to present in such a voice, in such a welcome, open-hearted way, so that the person, the dog owner, the dog coexister, doesn't feel like outside the post office. And that woman was so wonderful the day before, because I guess Jim told her that I was standing outside. I wasn't going to go in the post office, but I wasn't going to go and tell her. She was this is the thing, when someone doesn't have a mascot, she just forgot it. And she went to this tiny, tiny, tiny one-room post office. I have my P.O. box down there, I think just 150 yards away. And when she came out, she was like, oh, sorry. I'm like, oh, no, it's okay. It's just you being in there with it kept me outside, getting blessed and seeing more of like the birds and the trees. And they're like that amazing red-tailed hawk that was part of the sacred circle with the dog, with the new Raja dog yesterday. And in fact, I made a little tiny movie, like a 1 minute and 9 second movie or something. I'm not sure exactly how long it was, but with the red-tailed hawk, and then with Levi, the one who has that thing downstairs from patienttoperson.com, again, bringing the stories of people with rare genetic disorders and how they're dealing with it with their family. So it's living in the light from patient to person. So he just got the new dog, Raj, the new dog down. That's, for all the tumult that it might have gone through, was pretty mellow. Like just, it's funny, I never carry a stick. And I was carrying the stick for a while, and I was all set, and Levi's like, "Go throw a stick," and maybe because it's just tougher on my back, and I wouldn't have been able to keep up with and running around with Raj, and instead I just ended up pointing to the red-tailed hawk, and Oh, and then when I put them in the movie, it was the coolest thing. The red-tailed hawk was like a miracle. Just as I went back over to it, it got up and was flying, went across Route 9 and was just getting ready to, just as it was about to land in a tree, I pivoted the camera because I couldn't tell what birds they were, but they were, they were at least as big as pigeons, but I couldn't tell. But again, I'm looking, at this point, I was to make sure the picture was okay. I was looking more through the screen. And I get torn about that. I don't know about you, but like you, a lot of people, like I can be the worst picture taker ever, the worst videographer ever, but the way that it works, and I don't really look back at about 1% I ever shoot. But what you do is, well, 1% of whatever songs I recorded, whatever, it's kind of everything is a form of I love you that you're saying to the universe, to people you know and people you haven't met yet, that people can add to the movies you make and add to the music you make and add to the art you make. I was even saying that someone who, I had customer service that I had to call back like 4 times in the last couple of weeks. And I was like, and the good part is that I got to talking so long with the people, inviting, oh, if you and your, I was telling it to my mom last night. I was saying, like, I got to tell them like, that, oh, I wouldn't have got to invite them and their family. I go, as many people are with you. If you ever come, even if I'm, no matter how busy I am, I can come downstairs and make you guys free art quickly by the waterfall as you think of whoever needs love in the world. That's who we're sending it to, the energy, and how we're, what the energy will be is picturing who you love and who loves you, and that includes some beings that aren't alive anymore, and just open the heart, let it ripple out, and bless anybody who's stuck, right? Because that's why, like, when I was putting a thing about impeachment and sedition earlier and insurrection, one of the things I put on in terms of nonviolent communication, he died about 5 or 6 Februarys ago, was Marshall Rosenberg, and founded nonviolent communication. So if you look up cnbc.org, dude, 72, there's sacred. It's 62, sorry. Well, that's sacred. Every number is sacred, right? That's the thing. It's kind of like applying the Leonard Cohen thing about the words. You could say the same thing for numbers. It doesn't matter what you heard. There's a blaze of light in every word. Find out all find out like interviews with him and Paul Zollo, Zollo. It's like the most amazing interviewer of folks like, he's interviewed with Dylan, not just Leonard Cohen, but Dylan and Laura Nero and Paul Simon. Paul Simon liked his interview so much he ended up asking him to write liner notes for him. And he'd be Zappa, but also Burt Bacharach and Hal David, like very, very wide ranging. And we pull on the music in here because this is sorry. I think I'm not even sorry that, but it's, I'll just keep going because I'm afraid once I turn it off, then I won't start. Okay. Like, and again, you could turn this off at any moment. There's no reason you should be listening, but let it get you to paint, or let it get you to feel the breath of whoever's making our clothes in sweatshops, or whoever's making our equipment, meditate on where the sweatshop workers, where they'd like to be. So instead of feeling guilty and horrified and scrunched up, and apologetic for that we get to use the things that they make, just picture your love and your open heart wafting through the walls of every sweatshop on earth, and reaching not just the person who's making the thing that you might end up using one day, but it's making anything for anyone. Because all those years painting on the streets of Manhattan, I would tell someone, because a lot of times parents would be with their kids, and the kids all wanted to add and paint and whatever, or make music, and they're like, we just came from church and we're all dressed up or whatever. And that made me so happy. That was once on the holiest day of the year of the Jewish New Year. It was Yom Kippur, and this mother was with her kids, her 2 twin boys, and they had these. It was Upper East Side. The kids had like expensive suits on that most of us couldn't afford. And mother's like, what do you do with 2 brothers who are always fighting? And I'm like, and instead of getting into a whole like, oh, I'm fellow Jewish, oh, Cain and Abel. No, it's just like, I go, I don't know. I'll bet you there's stuff you guys really like about each other, and they're crazy about each other, even though we all fight and we all aren't ready to see each other's beautiful heart in every moment. But that's kind of why I pick up painting, because then you see the sacred community in every interaction. Even if I can't see it at first, I see it a minute later, or somebody comes walking up and they say, oh, do you see that amazing animal that's supporting that person that's in a really grumpy mood? They're letting the grumpiest person ever sit on their shoulder. I'd be, really? I did that? And again, just because saying yes to spirit, because the art I make is more wonderful if I'm not trying. It only works if I'm not worried about how it's going to come out. Just like if you're going to worry about a song, how it's going to come out, or the writing, because then your stuff will be more like worried, arthritic, clawing, and derivative. That's the worst. Like again, that worried, arthritic, clawing, and derivative. How may we help you? I just always think I think of 3 or 4 words in a row. You think of like the nicest pro bono law firm, or even if some people are part-time doing things that they're, because you worry, lawyers defending folks that they're so at odds with, so like heartbreakingly at odds with. I can't understand that. That's why, but I was saying on the last, I did a thing 3 or 5 days ago where I said, always look up earthjustice.org. That was like the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund until like 97 or so. Just, what am I trying to think of? I'm thinking when I paint out on the street, and then when someone would say that they're a lawyer, instead of hating them for it or saying you suck, I'll be like, oh, I don't know how much, but I'm so annoying. I'll be like, I don't know how much pro bono work you do, but for every you and anybody else who takes on a case or does extra hours, more than they were planning on, and more hours and more hours, I can keep making extra art for the person that is worth as much as their hourly, adding up all their hourly rates. And that sounds like me with the biggest ego or something. It'd be like, and you can't tell from these, because I think the picture on here is so low grade, but I could intersperse them with more like 1080 HD pictures or something. So that's when I was bumming out the person on customer service. I'm like, you can go to my website, but I haven't updated it in like 14 or 16 years. So the good thing is you shouldn't be attached, because the paintings that you might love, none of them are for sale on the site, and none of them are and they're all like either changed or I'm too emotionally attached to, I would never let go of. But that's a good reason to, if you have trouble letting go of art, make art. That's kind of what I was saying about the people that I was inviting. I could make free art for them when they come up to visit months or days or years from now at the waterfall downstairs. Is that right? How many hundreds, how many thousands of times have I made art for folks, and I only made the art because I was so happy to meet the folks, and I was out in public painting, or it could have been local, but more often than not, like let's say I was in New York or anywhere in the world, people I'm never going to see again. So just in thanks for being alive, that my fingers are working at all. And this is before my stepsister came down with ALS, but like you're like, okay, like I said, I'm past life expectancy of most sub-Saharan African males or Haitian males. So since my hands still work, I'll make art today. And then you see some creatures, and you see the way the ecosystem, the community is like blessing each other in the piece, and you'd be like, I don't know this piece well enough, I want to learn it. And that's the miracle. Hopefully you have a camera around, so this way, instead of saying no, we can keep in, well, that's how you can build a new friendship. You can say we keep in touch, and then after I get some good pictures of it, I can forward you the picture. But I'd rather take pictures and let go of the piece, because everybody means well, but everybody gets so busy with their next things to do in life, so that they, look, or the drawing that they were going to send, you don't know what happened in their life, or maybe they lost your address, or even if they didn't, the fact that they can't send you something, you probably entered their beautiful mind so many times, and maybe they did 20 or more beautiful, helpful, constructive, intuitive, amazing, community-minded, earth-helping things to make up for the fact that they never sent you the thing they said they were gonna. So we're 108, and we just hit 109, but 108 is that sacred, again, number, the 108 prayer beads, or the 100 FM dial going up to 108, or the or 108 times 10, like the 10, or the 1080p. Hold on. So F. We didn't do F earlier. No, we didn't. Okay. Hold on. How to not impeach. How to stand for love light in every scary being. Who thinks they're better than another color? Who thinks they're better than another gender? Who is scared that they're gonna lose their home if too many people come across the border? Where were you living before somebody came up with guns to keep you here? Where were you living before somebody came up with technology to knock out the folks who were living here before you and your family got here? Who was living here before our folks got here? Who was singing here before our folks got here? Who was bringing love light to every square inch? And all these native friends, they'd be like, you mean round inch? 'cause everything is curved and alive and singing. That's why we want to live in a circle instead of the square house you're trying to put us in. You never fall from helping someone with your loving light. You're never far from helping Earth right now. You can sing for the sake of every being. You could stand up with joy. You could stand up with joy to every dictator on Earth right now. Because it's as you, who could we stand up to Trump? I mean, and how dare we be thinking of what Republican congresspersons and Republican senators that are breaking our hearts by the way they've supported Trump, Republican voters who they voted for Trump, but just try and get everyone to a mad dictator on Earth right now and just flood their beautiful mind, expand their beautiful mind, like send them so much energy of love light that every stranger that they think of or look at or hear suddenly starts to feel like somebody that they love. They start to feel like somebody that they can relate to, that they care about. Because how many times have we met new amazing people that we're loving being with, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 hours into being with them, they say something horrifically racist or horrifically misogynist or just horrifically anti-Earth, as if it doesn't, as if, and even well-meaning folks, oh, it could all just die. What do you mean? What do you mean? Like, it's not about you or I. It's about folks who haven't got to have the Earth experiences as much as, how dare we have access to Earth experiences, and we have access to safe drinking water. We have access to breathable air. We have access to art supplies to express ourselves with. I was saying like last week about how that wonderful Chinese artist that I loved him. I loved some of what he was painting, but not the majority. But it still was so beautiful that he was doing it. I was just so grateful. I was saying how we'd have to destroy a lot of the art he was making because he could have time added to a sentence in China. And so there, like when you think of Xi, the leader in China, you think of him, his treatment of the Uyghurs and people in Tibet, people in Hong Kong, and that's like the coolest miracle of like how a leader could stay in power and not by instilling fear every second, by pitting, because you could say, oh, in our neighborhood, that's funny, you hate that color, you hate that religion, we're fine with that color, that religion, but we hate these folks instead, and like so just, since all your native friends, all your indigenous friends, all your First Nation friends be like, yeah, indigenous folks are like, yeah, dream time is real and folks are reachable during dream time, and how to do these really constructive things while you're dreaming and invite more and more folks that are used to doing really heinous, divisive things, murderous things, and invite them to be part of those peace circles. Because think about it, if you've been like you started out with some ideal, and now all you're doing is clinging to power, and most Republican senators or Congress people, would say, oh, you think I'm bad? If that person had got elected instead of me, they'd be doing worse, they'd be doing more damage. And so maybe just find a way to just so. And if people are verified, you'd be like, how am I going to open hearts while I'm dreaming? And do I know if I'm reaching into their dreams? And it's like, it would never hurt to try. You just start like a lot of our indigenous friends would do. 5 or 10 minutes before you go to sleep, you have like a stone, this was downstairs at the river. I don't even know how it got there. Somebody might have brought it because look at this, it looks like such a heart. And this flatness on the bottom, look at that. This is like, how many ceremonies was it maybe in? And then, this 2 women, yesterday I was down by the river, and first time getting outside all day, and I said, oh, and they left with some bags, and I'm like, oh, did you do, a lot of folks do that though, they take rocks, the rocks that we're singing to them. I mean, are you bringing rocks to like further ceremony, to wherever you're having sacred ceremony? And you'll tell the rocks about, oh, I brought you from here. I know you brought me from there. I was there. And it turned out it was a mother and daughter, and they had just been in the river. And we're talking about it was like 18 degrees earlier that morning. And they said they were in for like 4 minutes. And I'm like, that blew my mind, because to me, I couldn't be in for like more than 30 seconds. But I think the woman said her son was this guy locally in Northampton, because Many Hands, that quarterly magazine that has all this, smell therapies and shamanistic therapies and just all these, all these healing modalities and like crushed crystal singing bowls and Tibetan mode. Molly Scott, creative resonance. And so, but the mother's son, there was I think with Many Hands, there was a thing of him, what is it, upriver from Smith College, upriver from Paradise Pond, like being in that river. And who's the guy in Northern Europe, in like one of the Northern European socialist democracies, Wim Hof, or I don't know the name, but showing people how to breathe. Like he'll do marathons in the snow, like go for dozens and dozens of miles, like just in snow. It makes me think of our dear friend who I love. Hi, Richard. We all love Richard. But he'll go and he'll go around barefoot even in February. But he'll have shoes with him out of respect for if he has to go into what's the nice the burrito place. I hadn't been in there in years, and because I was dying to use a bathroom, and they couldn't let me in. They were so sweet. I understand why not to. But it's just there was enough room and space to move around. What was it? Bueno Asana. Then who was the woman? I'm still trying to figure out who was the woman who was so happy to see me. She's like, yeah, you can come and use your bathroom. Hi, how are you? And it's just like, and everybody's always familiar to me, even though people are so friendly, but I don't know from what. And maybe that's why the big baby in me, like, let's send energy as I just heard myself say it, to anybody who just went into a public place and they couldn't be 6 feet away from people. And then they watch themselves tense up, and they watch their body tense up, and they're trying to like find ways to just feel more at home, feel more to sing from the heart of whoever's just freaking them out. Right? Every time you're stuck waiting to move your 6 feet up, or and all the more reason to be wonderful to the people next to you online, or the cashier, because the more engaging with kindness you are, if for starters, no other reason, people are getting in their cars, and they're going to be less likely to road rage, as long as you don't go too far. Because if somebody's like, hippie, I know you're asking, who do we want to send love to while waiting on this line, or who's about to go into the surgical knife that we want to send love to them, and if they're like, shut up, hippie, I'll be like, okay, I'll be praying for the good health of everyone on earth silently for a minute, just like you do. Are you gonna replace everyone with love? Why don't we just picture every enemy and who they love? Let's try and picture all the warmest parts of the heart of someone who's being so mean. Nobody's born to hate you. Nobody's born to kill. Nobody's born to hate you or anyone. Create space for folks to love each other. Find ways for folks to hear each other's heart. Thank you, every being on every earth. We hope everywhere you find yourself, it feels like family is ever present, ever available, ever from the breathing of the heart of the every other. Thank you, every being. Let's picture everyone's relatives. Let's send love to everyone's relatives on earth right now. We love you, every being. We love you.